Tommy, you had a very long career with Cork. I mean, 10 years on the panel, two All Ireland medals, four Munsters, even go back into the late '90s, winning a minor. And your first season, it was kind of probably a tough one for you because you made your debut for both the hurlers and the footballers in senior championship in 2003. What do you recall? Like, how do you recall that particular season?
Yeah, like even before that, Shane, actually, I was kind of knocking around both panels for a couple of years. I suppose I went to UCC and I was on the football panel in 2001, I'd say. I was on the hurling panel in 2002. And then in going into 2003, I was kind of between a rock and a hard place. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. There was new management in the hurling. I broke my bone playing a Fitzgibbon practice match in my foot with UCC, so I was kind of out till about the middle of March, and I was going to hurling trainings, and it was doing fine, getting on grand, and I'd be going to the odd football training with Larry and stuff like that, and I seemed to be getting more of a run with the footballers. I was coming on in a few league games or there, 5-10 minutes, and I suppose it was a lot to learn, and we were training up in Fermoy one night with the hurlers, and I think we were playing Tipperary around Easter weekend, I'd say, in 2003, and I was actually going to tell you at the time, I was saying, look, footballers in the National League game there at the weekend, I think I'll go with them because I've been kind of told that I might get a good game with them. And before I got my words out, John Allen said to me, "You're starting on Saturday against Tipperary and Thurles," and I was going, right. And I kind of already had told Larry that, yeah, I'll be there Sunday, or I'll put my name in the hat for Sunday. So that made me backtrack out of all for hurling to football. But so I had to go back then to Larry. I told him, and for the rest of the league, then I was nearly playing the rest of the hurling games, and I was coming on in the football games. Funny enough, then I made my football debut before my hurling debut because we played an AVB game in football, and Dr. Con Murphy, to his football wisdom, told the selectors to play me centre forward in one of the practice matches in the AVB game, and it was one of these AVB games that was wide open, and I got a load of scores from centre forward, and I got a goal, and everything just seemed to click. And we went up and played Galway and Ennis then the following weekend, and I was centre forward, and it seemed to do okay. It was like, Jesus, I can play football right centre forward. And so from the championship against Limerick down the park, I was named centre forward, and it was a wet day, and I was on Stephen Lucy, I'd say, and he beat me at the post in terms of trying to play the game. He was a good player at the time, and top of his game, and I was hauled off after 40 minutes. So myself and Con would always have a good laugh about that over the years. But so then the football championship, back then it was the back door. There was no round robin or anything, it was back door straight knockout. I think it was one of the first couple of years of it, and we were due to play Roscommon up in Dr. Hyde Park the day after Cork and Clare were to play in Thurles. So myself and Sean Ogre on the football panel, Donal O'Grady called us aside and said, "Look, lads, you've been on our hurling team for the last 3-4 league games. Chances are you'll be on our championship team. So if you want to go to Dr. Hyde Park on a Saturday night, that's fine, but you won't be playing hurling on the Sunday with us, because we need a full 15. We need Cork to get back on the road in hurling." So that kind of made up myself and Sean Og's mind. We went back to Larry, and while he was disappointed, he knew that we kind of preferred hurling to football first up. And unfortunately, the footballers lost in Roscommon. Larry packed it up, and I suppose the hurling just took off from there. Then we beat Clare and Thurles the following day, and it went on to be a great few years with the hurlers. But that's how I came to playing hurling and football at senior level, I suppose, with Cork.
Even before that, I saw somewhere that you had trials with Brian Kerr's underage soccer team that ended up winning the European title.
Yeah, well, trials might be a bit of a stretch to the imagination, but you know how the story goes over the years. I was playing under 16 soccer with Leeds inside in Ballyvalan in Cork. The cut-off date for soccer at the time wasn't the 1st of January, it was the 1st of August. And I was born in the middle of July, and there was a fellow with Leeds, Donal Buckley's his name, he's a principal inside in town in the AG. And he got me involved in Leeds, but we played well in a few games. We won a couple of league championships and stuff, and it was a case of, it was one of these games where, we'll say even for the county setup, you'd have trials over the winter and your panel would be picked, and then at the very end they might say, right, look, we'll do a game there between 2 15s and bring in the kind of everyone else from the other teams in the county and see if anyone stands out. And it was kind of, that was the trial. Now it was kind of like, here are the lads that are showing up well in their respective leagues, even though we've our European Championship panel picked. So went up to Dublin with a few lads from Cork, up. It was an eye opener in terms of, even at that age, it was 15, go for under 16 trials. You went in, the gear was up in a hanger for you. All you brought was your boots and your shin guards, and you went out, did a few sessions. And the one thing I noticed actually then was, I think one of the players said it to me: be sure you're vocal, be sure you're heard. Don't just go out and do the things you normally do that mightn't be seen or heard. Be sure that you can be heard shouting, talking, communicating with different people on the pitch. And I suppose that's one thing I kind of took on then for the rest of my days, that if you go into an environment like that, a top sports environment, you have to make yourself heard when you're playing the game.
And do you recall any of the players from it? I think, wasn't John O'Shea part of that group?
Yeah, but they wouldn't have been at that try. No, I went there. There would have been a couple of very good players from Cork at the time. Timmy O'Callaghan, who went on to play basketball at Neptune, UCC Neptune, Blue Demons. A fellow by the name of David Warren, he played at Mayfield. Other than that, I can't remember most of the names, but the names that went on to be successful in that age group wouldn't have been at that trial that day, no.
Okay, so it sounds like you were a small bit down the depth chart then.
Oh yeah, just a bit right, yeah.
Can we talk about the 2003 season with Cork, and you get all the way to the All-Ireland final, and I found an article from 2003 saying there was a banner in Grenna saying, "Kilkenny beware, you're entering Kenny country." Do you recall the build-up to that final?
I do, I suppose. That was a crazy summer in terms of the minute we beat Clare, it just seemed to take off. John Gardner, myself, John Gardner played the year before. Ronan Curran, myself, Niall Mack, and Satanta made our debuts, and I suppose Satanta became the poster boy of the team. Like, he was tall, dark, and handsome, as you'd want to say. And it just kind of took off everywhere we went. It was big games, big crowds. We were doing summer camps and everything like that. Got to an All-Ireland final, and I say it was my uncle and my father made up that sign actually at the top of the road here. But yeah, kind of, I suppose for me the season personally kind of tailed off a small bit. We drew against Wexford, played the All-Ireland final against Kilkenny. Probably the occasion kind of got to me a small bit. I was marking Tommy Walsh, and he took me for 3 points in the first 10 minutes, and yeah, I just couldn't think my way out of it. And to this day, I don't know how I wasn't brought off in the first half. I was put into midfield, and kind of game even enlarged me, passed me by in midfield. Got a few balls in the second half. Could have got a couple of points, but at that stage, I didn't have the experience of playing midfield to know that. You know what I mean? So the season kind of tailed off for me in 2003, but from where I was very pleased in terms of, I was on a team, we were being successful. I kind of nearly more or less nailed down my position in the team. So it was a bit of an eye-opener for next year, and the commitment and the drive was there for 2004 in terms of what we wanted to do. And I suppose there's a story then of Brian Cochran at the banquet that night in 2003 and seeing the drive of the players, and that kind of led to him coming back. And he would have been a big idol of mine growing up. So kind of the drive was definitely there for 2004 after losing that.
And do you recall that Brian Corcoran incident at the banquet?
I do, yeah. I remember him being there. I remember talking to him, being down and out. And, obviously those banquets, when you lose, you don't want to be there, but you have to be there. And we kind of stuck together. And I suppose with a good day coming down on the Monday. And I suppose it sowed the seed in his head. He was probably still only, I don't know, 30 at the time, maybe 31. So he still, at that time, the game wasn't as fast as it was now. So he obviously and successfully felt that he could have a good career after it. But yeah, I remember that. I remember him being at the dinner, and I remember talking to him and things like that. And he was just really positive, saying, "Oh, you'll come back next year. You'll be back next year. You'll find team. You'll be back next year." And I suppose he was telling himself as much as telling us, geez, there's a chance that these lads could do something. And no, it was brilliant that he did come back.
Because his famous point against Limerick from, 30 yards out off his knees, that was very much the re-announcing himself as an inter-county hurler. How crucial was he? But never mind the fact his quality as a hurler, but just having him back in the dressing room.
Oh, fantastic! I suppose I grew up in a way. My aunt and uncle lived across the road from Brian's home place down in Glanmire or Carlog, across the road from the Aaron's pitch. So any chance I had, any summer, I was down there. I won't say I was using my cousins, but I was down there to see Brian Cochran, and we just have him in the dressing room for the likes of myself and the younger lads. He was, we grew up watching him carry Cork through a decade of underperformance, and he was still a standout player, and even just the way he spoke and when he spoke and what he had to say was always seemed to be on point and the right thing to say, as opposed to just speaking for the sake of it, And he was great crack off the field too. he was a good character, well able to have the crack, and definitely brought a good dimension to our team.
Have you been watching back the Munster final against Waterford, which has been on telly a couple of times?
Yeah, I watched that game, and I watched the 2005 All Ireland final against Galway, and she's like the Munster final in 2004 was very good, but I thought, looking back now, the 2005 final against Galway was shocking. I thought that, even some of the balls that I was playing in, and the lads, there was just balls going everywhere, where if it happened now, you'd be nearly castigated for hitting the ball away, But different times, but God, they were great days, especially the one in Thurles, I suppose, against Waterford. That was an unbelievable game that day. It was heaving, like you could see even in the pictures on the TV, like it was packed to the rafters.
Are you able to sort of or imagine yourself back in the situation and sort of picture what it was like to be on the field that day?
In a way, I can, but in another way, I only said it here last night to Noreen at home watching. It was when Sean Og was on the Sunday game. They were showing snippets of his speech, and I was saying, like, I'm trying to remember being on the steps of the Hogan stand, listening to his speech. I kind of can't, like it. I don't know. It's like as if I'm watching someone else who's up on the steps, and that kind of thing. But I suppose for me, I probably remember more the build up to the games in terms of the bus, the dressing room beforehand, maybe the dressing room after, as opposed to being out on the pitch. When you're out on the pitch, you're nearly just ingrained into doing what you were supposed to do, and it was nearly like you were on autopilot. You went out onto the pitch, you did what you had to do, you came off, and then you became yourself again, kind of thing. But it's brilliant to look back and to see yourself involved in those games and say, geez, I was part of a successful group at the time, and part of, I suppose, sporting history in terms of winning All Ireland.
That goal you got against Wexford in the semi-final, like solo through from midfield, and then blasted it from, sure, it must have been 23 or 4 yards out. That wouldn't be something that people would typically do.
No, and funny enough, it was, I suppose, I had moved into midfield earlier that season with Jerry O'Connor. It was actually that game in Limerick where Brian made his comeback. And in the Munster final against Waterford, if you actually watch it back, Dan Shannon referred to it actually in an article a couple of weeks ago in the paper, that a few times in that game, I'd say Jory, Ben, myself, we were actually through. We had overlaps in the first half in that game against Waterford, but we were so, in a way, green to the way to play midfield. We were, tipping the ball over the bar, whereas Brian had pulled off a few times where if you gave a pop pass, you would have got a goal. Likewise, Ben had pulled off. Likewise, Jory was running through, Ben had pulled off, that kind of thing. Like, so in fairness to Donal O'Grady, he probably spotted that, and before the Wexford game in Croke Park that day, he said, if you get the ball and you're soling through and it opens up, keep going and have a shot, go for a shot and see what happens. And I suppose it never really occurred to me up to that point. I was more, got the ball, go tip it over the bar or whatever. If there's someone on me, pass it off to someone else. So that's how that came about, that I got the ball in the middle of the field and I had a quick look up and there was nobody at all down the middle, and I just said, I'm going to go here and I'm going to have a shot and see what happens. And if you look back at the shot, I think it was straight down the middle of the field and Damien Fitzhenry was unsighted, but such was the force I got behind the ball, it just flew to the net, and it was it was a great feeling, getting a goal. It's probably my only championship goal, I'd say.
So you're coming into the final then against Kilkenny, who are looking to retain the title again. Do you remember the lead up to that game? Do you remember the importance of Donal O'Grady, or who were the leaders in the dressing room?
Well, Donal O'Grady, to be fair to him, was a fantastic manager. Like, he was very good at spotting. Obviously, they play the game and win the game, but he was very good at spotting, even technical things like hooking and blocking and flicking and all that. That was his basic. Like, we had them really, really well drilled in terms of flicking, hooking, tracking, all that kind of thing, support play. And again, can't remember the exact details of his pre-games speeches or anything like that, but it was always very meticulous, always on point. Just really, really well drilled. And your obvious leaders, like in that team, when you look back on it, right out from Donal Og, Sully, Sean Og, Ronan Cornett, and Tobacco into a huge leader. The O'Connor twins were after coming off a Club Ireland success. Ryan Cochran, one of Cork's greatest players in the last 20 years. Timmy Mack, who was always a brilliant player to go to in clutch moments. Like, he was a really big player, so you could look around the room knowing safely that you were going out with a good team there. But I suppose it was, the main emotion was the hurt of the previous year, where we got to a final in 2003. We didn't play well. I suppose you can't say Kilkenny played particularly well in 2003, and that was probably for us, that if we put in a good performance, then Kilkenny would have to raise their performance. And I suppose at the time we probably felt that we could match them and better them, and we did in 04. And that was probably the main emotion, that we just wanted to make sure that they didn't pass us by, that we didn't see it as an occasion or anything like that. And it was up to correct the wrongs in the previous year,
And you had obviously talked about your performance the previous year. Did you come off the field delighted with your own performance this time? And obviously the fact that you got your first All-Ireland medal was huge.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I got a point toward late in the game. I know that it was practically over the game now, but yeah, like I suppose for the first 15, 20 minutes of that game, the ball wasn't really coming our way, but I was still doing the right things, tracking runs, getting touches, flicks here, there. And as the game went on, then it began to open up, got loose ball, set up a couple of scores here or there, but definitely more proactive than the previous year in 2003, where I was probably more worried about the occasion, marking Tommy Walsh, who I knew from UCC, waiting to see what would happen instead of taking the game on myself. And it was a big learning curve, that 03 final for me, but definitely stood to me the rest of my career, and in fairness, I remember after in 03, I'd say Tommy Walsh came over to me, and I don't know if it still happens, Shane, where the two teams in an All-Ireland final go down to the bar in the hotel or in the stadium in Croke Park and have a drink and go their separate ways, But that time I remember Tommy Walsh came over to me in 03, and in 04 then I went over to him, and it wasn't a case of, I was going over gloating we'd won the 04 final. It was like, you came over last year and coming over, we're still UCC teammates, and we'd a bottle of beer or two, and said the best luck and see in a few weeks kind of thing. So that was kind of nice too to acknowledge that,
And it wasn't at this stage that at this stage, did you have this sort of famous distaste between the Cork and Kilkenny hurlers that was talked about years later? Were the seeds of that there already because of what had happened with the GPA thing and the socks down and all this kind of thing? Socks up.
In my eyes at the time, I look back now and I say it wasn't in 04. I didn't see, obviously, like Cork and Kilkenny, they were the two biggest entities at the time, so there was a hatred for that reason alone. The Kilkenny beat us the year before, we wanted to beat them this year. But even in 06, I think it probably from after 06, where they came and beat us in the three in a row, and then they went on to be so successful that, I won't say we were looking on jealously, but we were probably looking on saying, we could have maybe won another one of those, maybe, but in my eyes, no, at the time, because I was in UCC and Tommy Walsh was there, Fitzpatrick, Michael Royce, John Tennyson, and they were great fellas, they were great characters in UCC, and I had no problem going down mingling with them in UCC, playing games, as third level colleges teams used to, and maybe still do, you go out after a game and have a few drinks, and I had no problem having that crack. We lost the Fitzgibbon final in 04, and we had great crack for a few days down around College Road, all the Cork Kilkenny tip lads. So for me at the time, probably not, but later in the years it probably took off from the fact that they were so successful and we were looking on going the other way,
Then the 2005 season, you're looking to retain the title. My memory has been down at Páirc Uí Chaoimh for that Munster final against Tipperary, and obviously you went well ahead, possibly 9 or 10 points in the first half. I remember Paul Kelly scoring something like 7 points from play in that game, which is an outrageous performance. And then towards the end of the game, as a Tip fan, I was leaving with a couple of minutes to go, heard the roar of the crowd because the goal had gone in, went running back in, couldn't quite see what was going on. But obviously you held on that day. Do you remember that particular final? How you should have probably just coasted it and probably made hard work of it?
Yeah, I remember, I don't think it was one of my better games. I think I could have been taken off that day in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But I remember going into the game, as I said earlier, we were nearly so well drilled that to the outside it might have looked like we were cocky or anything, but we just knew what we had to do in terms of how the system we played and the way we went about it. And, I think there's one example where Tip had a penalty. It was either a penalty or 21 down in the Blackrock end, and it was saved, and the ball was worked all the way up the wing to Fraggy over by the uncovered stand at the time, and he came in field and got a point. And that was kind of the mantra at the time. If a ball breaks in the fence, you work it up the field, and the mantra I think was run Forrest run, and with reference to Forrest Gump, you get the ball and you just run it. It was nearly like an NFL play, and even that point it summed it up to all of us as a team. Like, this is working. We're flying it here. There's no reason why we're not going to win. And it probably began to seep in that, look, geez, we weren't doing things the way we should have been doing then. Tips started coming back, and always Cork Tip games are always open games. In fairness, they're probably never the most physical games. It's always whoever's the basically can go and play the best hurling wins the game, compared to, we'd say, typical Kilkenny over the years. So we were probably lucky to get through that game after, and it opened our eyes up for this quarter-final and the semi-final. And I suppose going in the final against Galway in 05, we probably had history on our side in that. I don't think Galway had ever beaten a Cork team in an All-Ireland final. So, but the scare in the Munster final was probably the opener for us, yeah.
Was there any sort of a sense of we need to guard against complacency once Galway beat Kilkenny in the semi-final, because the whole country probably expected Kilkenny to go on and have a big clash with G again?
Do you know, there was, I'd say, Shane, and John Allen probably got it with his tactics. I'd say a few nights after that, he explained to us the tactics that he wanted us to do in the final was go along with the ball instead of running it, because, as you said there, the whole place would have been expected us to do more or less the same thing against Galway that we've been doing over the previous 18 months. And if you actually watch that final, and as I was saying there, like anytime we got the ball around the middle of the field, 8 or 9 times out of 10 it was hit straight in, and the amount of balls in the second half even that ran out over the end line that were hit into Brian Cochran was phenomenal. So I'd say the complacency was probably knocked in the head by John changing into tactics, that we needed to get into our head. We're going along with the ball, and Ben's goal came from a long ball from Sully, I think, pucking it out from full back. So I think that knocked the complacency on the head straight away, definitely.
And so, like, how sweet was that final? I mean, maybe compared with the year before?
I suppose it was different. People always talk in sport about winning your first medal, your first trophy, your first big competition, and there's nothing sweeter than that first. For me, like, that was my first. I played underage with Cork in minor and under 21, but never won anything. I was the year they won a minor. I was out injured and I was probably too young, and my 21 years were the years of the great Limerick teams of the early noughties there, so we were always kind of put down by Limerick then. So my first medal for Cork was a Munster senior hurling medal, and my second one was an All-Ireland medal in 2004. So those first medals are always like something you cherish and something you hold more. But the second one was just, I suppose it was a big relief. John Allen had come in. He probably wasn't renowned as a manager or a coach. He'd come from a way down the field. He started off being physio or not physio, and masseur in the Cork senior team way back, and he worked his way up. Did his coaching with different teams. Obviously, he was a successful player at the Bars and Cork, but probably for him it was real justification for him that he can do this and he could carry the team on. But 04 was probably a better feeling. Yeah, 04 was a better feeling.
Is there can you quite believe that was the last All-Ireland that Cork won, considering the pedigree you have?
Crazy, yeah, crazy. As I said, with the whole strike and the way the managers went in years subsequent, would we have won an All-Ireland when Kilkenny were at the height of their powers? I'm not sure. I'd like to say we would, but I'm not sure. But we definitely would have got to another couple of finals in the late 90s, I believe, if everyone was playing the same way. But yeah, then and coming into the next decade, and it's probably reflective of the way Cork as a county thought over the years that, look, Cork or Cork, we'll win All-Irelands every couple of years, every decade. There's no need to be doing anything different or putting structures in place. And that's probably only beginning to see through now that, the strikes, there wasn't proper structures coming through in the late noughties, early 10s, or whatever it is. And that's probably showing now. We in 2013 against Clare, 20 seconds away from winning All-Ireland, and people would say that's your All-Ireland for the decade. So it is hard to believe, and I think probably Cork still have a bit of catching up to do in terms of their development of bringing players through from those development squads up to senior teams.
And in 2006, though, I remember at the time thinking you were relentless, and even the way you came back against Clare in the semi-final, the idea that you would take a massive downturn just seemed so alien. But even just to look at the final against Kilkenny, and everyone talks about the way they stopped you and their power game and the way they were all over you, like that they were stuck to you basically like white on rice. Do you remember? Could you sum up the change in Kilkenny, or was it more to do with you?
Oh, it was Kilkenny, definitely. They probably had that edge that we had in 2004. In terms of. We lost the year previous. They were actually going for 3 in a row in 2004 as well. So that was probably a talking point within our group. So like Kilkenny, 2006 for them was probably stopping our 2000 or 3 in a row. And as I said, to the outside world, we had probably become this, Cork cockiness, for want of a better phrase, that we all sometimes inherently have down here. And, they probably wanted to stop that. Like, they were coming, they were forced, and all their ducks were lining up. They had a great manager, they had fantastic players coming through. And I probably got an eye opener of it in UCC, where in 2001, 2 and 3, the Kilkenny lads were, I won't say they were given a loose leash, but they were allowed to play way down in UCC. They go back up to Kilkenny for training maybe on a Friday before a Sunday game, and if we were playing Fitzgibbon on a Tuesday, that they were obviously away from prying eyes down up in Kilkenny, and they could enjoy themselves and play their matches and whatever, and go back up then and train in Kilkenny, where coming into 04, 05, they were doing a lot of gym work. I remember Jeff Fitzpatrick going to the gym a lot, John Tennyson going to the gym a lot. So they were building long term in terms of their strength, their power, their force, and it really came in that day in 2006. You could see like they were hunting us in packs, much like John Allen changed their tactics the year before in terms of going long ball. They really set up their structure. Like I suppose Mick Dempsey, having a football background, they were a strong physical unit, and that was their template for the next 5-6 years, and in a way it nearly still is. But unfortunately, we just couldn't think our way out of it that time. We were probably so ingrained in our support, running into traffic, giving the pampas, that we couldn't think our way out of it, or even think to just hitting the ball long, getting it and hitting it, and making them go on the back foot, turning them towards their own goal. But it's definitely more Kilkenny than us, I think, yeah.
You're probably still only in your early 20s at this stage, maybe 23, 4, 5, something like that.
Yeah.
The next couple of years, were they very frustrating?
They were. Again, 2007, we were beaten in the Munster Championship. There was the whole furore. It was nearly like the gods were lining up against us. Cork and Clare came out onto the pitch at the same time, and Donal O'Grady, Sully and Sean Og were banned for the next game against Waterford. Then we went through the back door. We played Waterford up in Croke Park. A free given against Donal O'Grady at the end of the game, of the drawn game, that like you see that 9 times out of 10, and it's a clash ball and a 21, and I think if we got over Waterford that day, we could have got back to a final in 07. But then, look, all the strikes kicked in. We weren't as fit as we should have been in 08, 9, 10. Kilkenny were forced to be reckoned with, and we wouldn't, you needed a top class setup and players really, really on top of their game to challenge Kilkenny that time, if you were going to challenge them at all. Until tip in maybe 2009, definitely 2010, there was no one came in with an ass's roar them, but they were frustrating. I nearly look back on my Cork career, Shane, as the first 4 years where it was so successful. You'd 4 Ireland finals, 4 Munster finals, and then there was this dip in between where there was just off field stuff and nothing really was happening. And then my last 2 years in 2012 and 2013, where we got back being successful, contesting Munster finals and our Ireland finals, and I nearly black out those middle years because it was so frustrating and so disappointing,
Really, it's quite as bad as that. I was trying to think of seasons where you looked like you were ready to make a push. 2008 for a while, the way you played against Galway, and the fact that you went down to 14 men and won that great game where Joe Canning scored something like, was it 2-12 or something like that? Ben O'Connor was in hurler of the year type form if you had to go in and win the All-Ireland that year. But it faded then, am I right in saying, in the semi-final against Kilkenny?
Yeah, like that, it probably, it's funny because your fitness, even though you'd always preach a break from training and things like that, but at that level, if you take too much of a break or you're not training enough, which probably the strike from 07 into 08, 08 into 09, we missed out on a good block of fitness that would have stood to us over the next couple of years. And that's probably what has started happening. We were starting the seasons well, we were fit enough, but our fitness was fading, tapering off, because we just didn't have the bank of work built up in us in those early pre-season sessions. But yeah, even you look at 2010, Shane, we played Waterford up in Thurles, a drawn game. Waterford Tony Brown got a goal more or less in the last minute to draw the game, to take it to a replay, and we were always, those years are summed up by we were getting to the finish line, but we couldn't get over it. Waterford beat us in a replay, ended up meeting Kilkenny in a semi-final and beaten out the door by Kilkenny. So 2009, Galway beat us in Thurles. we weren't at the races. 2011.
Was that Galway in the Gaelic grounds?
That's right. Yeah. And again, it was only until 2012, I suppose, when Jimmy came in and brought a kind of a new lease of life and brought a couple of young players with him, and that we kind of started getting back on the road. Jimmy is such an iconic figure down in Cork that fans probably started coming back again to follow Jimmy and follow the team, and probably mended a few bridges. And it was a pity that I knew in 2013 it was my last season when I was playing. I just knew in my mind that was it. I wanted to move on, even though I was fit enough. I'd no knocks. I just felt I wanted to give other players a chance, and I wanted to give time back to my club. So it would have been nice to round off 2013 with a win, but again, it just summed up the previous 6-7 years where we were getting to a position to win the game, and we just couldn't see it out.
You talk about Jimmy Barry Murphy coming back in and bringing people back to watch the games. How much had people, or how badly had the relationship between the players and the supporters, which had seemed so strong maybe 5 years ago, how badly had it gone?
It was bad enough because I would have seen people around town and matches and things like that, and you might catch their eye or glance them or something, and you'd know if things were, I'll say, normal. They would have come over talking, or you would have went over talking, but you just wouldn't broach the subject, or you wouldn't talk with them, because there was that animosity and that kind of bitterness over what happened. That who gave us the right to go on strike, we're amateur players and all that kind of stuff. And you can see their argument, but at the same time, look, we were arguing for what we wanted to argue for, and it was there. Like, you even going to club games, like, you'd be getting a bit of slagging during games about it and all this kind of stuff, and it was just, it wasn't nice. It wasn't nice to be part of it. It wasn't nice for the fans to be in it, and the fact we weren't winning then, people were saying, yeah, look, that's what they get now for going on strike. And at least in 03 and 04 and 05, we were backing it up. We were getting the finals, we were winning, and we were producing the goods. Like, that we were saying, yeah, look, we went on strike, but we're giving back here, like, at least, So, and as I said earlier, even in a work environment, I was training as an accountant at the time at Ernst & Young, and you're going out to different companies doing audits, and in your heart that the people in those companies were GMN, and they just didn't want to talk to you. Like, they'd tell you the work stuff, but the GA was kind of nearly out of bounds. Like, and I knew as well not to broach it, like, because I wasn't going pushing any boundaries, and it was just awkward times.
Was there ever a point where you were like, and still probably coming into your prime years, loads of time left to play inter-county hurling, where you were like, is this worth it? I have a couple of All-Irelands, one of 4 Munster titles. Do I need this?
Honestly, I'd say no, because at the time, I suppose I was so ingrained. I grew up, obviously, like a lot of people, yourself and more across the country, that I wanted to play at my county. Like, I wanted to wear the red of Cork and, I suppose, represent my family, my parish, and all that kind of thing. So that was probably in my mindset that at the time, yeah, I still want to play with Cork, But if looking back now, I suppose with age and with reflection and everything, if I was there now, I'd be saying, no, like, lads, I'm done. Like, I want to move on and do something else in my life, go traveling or go see the world, or play with my club or something. But that's easy to say now, looking back. But definitely when you're in the thick of it, there was never really crossed my mind to jump ship per se and say, look, move on, let someone else come in and get Cork hurling back up and running.
Could you sum up the impact that Jimmy Barry Murphy would make coming into a dressing room? Obviously, you'd had a couple of years where you're not successful. He's an iconic player, but what is it about him?
It's hard to put your finger on, Shane. He's very enthusiastic, very infectious, and Jimmy would ask you a question and he'd nearly answer it for you before you got your answer out, And it's just that kind of way, and he'd have a real Cork accent, and it'd be 100 miles an hour discussion, and like, his views on the game were simple, but he'd have you really, really worked up going out on the pitch, really, really motivated, really, really driven to do well. And if you look back now, like, I could probably say our tactics under Donal O'Grady or John Allen were probably more sophisticated than under Jimmy, but we still played brilliantly under Jimmy and got big scores and won big games, and that's the kind of person he is like. And you see it, even he brought through those minors in 95 up to the All-Ireland in 99, and he was just this real passionate Cork person who lived for the GA, lived for hurling and football, and he kind of passed that on to the players when they went out onto the pitch, That's not to say that he wasn't a good mind or a great mind at hurling, but he was definitely more kind of passionate and enthusiastic in terms of bringing out those emotions going out onto the pitch.
Would he do that collectively, or was there good man management with him on a personal level?
More collectively, I suppose. Individually, from experience, he'd be very good at, telling you what you're good at and making you feel good going out on the pitch, if you know what I mean. I know nowadays, I suppose management is all encompassing, where you need to look at your weak points and you need to say, oh, you're not moving well off your left hand or your left foot or anything like that. Whereas Jimmy probably wouldn't have any of that. He'd say, God, you're brilliant in the air, catching the ball and driving it down into the full forward line kind of thing, and the first ball will come down on you, then you'll catch and heel it down, and you'll say to yourself, geez, I am actually brilliant, and that's kind of the way that's what Jimmy would have you, the way you think, and I think that there was a lot of younger lads came through in 2012, 2013, Seamus Harnedy, Dan Carney. I suppose Hoggy was still relatively young in terms of his age at the time, even though he was around a good few years. So that seeped into them then, and it gave them huge confidence. And it's probably unfortunate for that group of players that if they did win the All-Ireland then in 2013, they could have pushed on again in 2014, but that nagging doubt was in their mind then.
Could you quite believe it when you got to that final in 2013? I mean, there's a big turning point in the semi-final, that red card for Ryan O'Dwyer, and on balance, I think it was very harsh to get 2 yellows for the 2 incidents.
The first one was harsh, was it? Was the first one very harsh?
I think so. He kind of caught, was it Jamie Collin or Coughlin, whatever you pronounce it, and I thought it was very start of the game. Fair enough, it was a little bit messy, but I think overall it didn't merit sending a guy off. But either way, you made your own luck and you ended up getting the scores and what have you. But could you quite believe you were into an All-Ireland final?
It was kind of bittersweet for me, Shane, at the time, because I was actually taken off in that game against Dublin in the semi-final, and as I said earlier, I knew that 2013 season was my last season. I just, we'd beaten Kilkenny and Thurles. There was a big hype that gave everyone a huge lift, beating this great Kilkenny team, albeit without a couple of their bigger name players at the time. So going up to Dublin that day and into Croke Park that day, I knew in my mind that I was finishing up that season, but I let it seep into my head that, God, this could be my last time in Croke Park as a player, and I wasn't tuned into the game at all going in. Going in the bus, I'd always get butterflies going in, seeing the red and white and hearing the noise and things, and it just wasn't registering with me. I was looking around in the bus, and I could hear and see things happening that you normally wouldn't, And I knew going out on the pitch that day, I could be in trouble, and it gave the show. And it was bittersweet for me going down on the bus, because it was a great feeling getting back to a final after all that went before, in terms of the strikes, the change of managers, all that kind of stuff. New players came in, and it was brilliant. And even to see the younger lads looking forward to it, and there was talks of, a lot of the managers, and Jimmy was gravitating towards me, and a few of the younger players were gravitating towards me, saying, what do we need to do to get ready for the All-Ireland final? What do we need to look after? Who do we need to speak to? All that kind of stuff. But in the back of my mind, I knew going down on the bus that I wouldn't be playing in the final, that I was going to be a sub. Brian Murphy was coming back from injury, and Jimmy had great time for Brian as a defender, and I knew if it came down to it that, given the fact that I played so poor in the semi-final, Brian was coming back, that Brian would be selected ahead of me. And I'm not bitter about it. I gave the management the stick to beat me with in the semi-final performance, and I just knew going down that I was gone. And I actually told my parents, I'd say about 2 weeks later, I said, look, I'm actually not going to be starting the Ireland final. And what are you talking about? And I said, I won't be playing. I could just know from training. But it was brilliant. You could begin to see that kind of fanatical Cork support coming back. And, obviously these new players and the team and the panel had their own families coming into the setup, in terms of, watching trainings and going to matches and things. So they were bringing that new level of support, and it was fantastic. And I suppose it was just a pity that we couldn't see it out then after.
Can I actually just jump back again? You mentioned the Kilkenny quarter-final in Thurles when you knocked them out.
Yeah.
Was there a big sweetness there in terms of you'd kind of been under their thumb for a few years? I mean, everyone had really, but to actually get a championship win over them again, that must have been fairly sweet.
It was, and again, I suppose Lady Luck was on her side. Henry Shefflin was sent off the same day for. Okay, one challenge was probably a yellow card, but the other one wasn't really.
Yeah, it was harsh enough now.
Yeah, and Lady Luck was on our side that day, and I was actually marking Henry Shefflin that day, and I remember even I think he got a point. I think it was a free. He got from out the field that from where I was standing, 10 yards from him, went over the bar just inside the post, but it was way wide. And he went straight into the umpires, and I followed him in, obviously, and he was saying it was a point, and I was shouting it wasn't. And when we went back out to our position, we obviously had a laugh about it. Like I said, Henry, that was definitely over the bar, But that kind of, I don't really know him personally off the field, but that incident kind of played on his mind. So I don't know, was there tension in his own camp or whatever leading up to the game, but he couldn't let that go for a good 10-15 minutes, and I think that probably contributed to him getting sent off in terms of he wasn't at the top of his game. But like I said, if he wasn't sent off that day, it could have been a different story again. But we played fantastic that day, and I think even for the Cork fans beating Kilkenny, it was saying, hey, Cork are actually after coming out of their doldrums, the new players, they're playing Dublin in a semi-final. Obviously, we were favourites, and the other side of the draw, I think, was Clare and Limerick. So Limerick had beaten us in the Munster final, so it was a case of, look, we're probably in the top two here of chances of winning the All-Ireland, and it began to seep into people's mentally that, look, we can get back to a final.
I'm trying to think back at that game against Kilkenny. Something that kind of comes to mind is, did Shane O'Neill absolutely peel someone at one stage? There might have been a penalty incident. Maybe you remember it a bit better.
They got a penalty and they scored it, but I think Tommy Walsh had encroached. I can't remember the incident for the penalty now as to what happened.
I think you're right with that part, though.
And then the penalty was taken again. It was saved. It came back out to Richie Hogan, I'd say, and it was deflected over the bar. So we went down the field then and got a point a couple of minutes later, I think, and it kind of just, I suppose it gave everyone a big, huge lift that Cork had made these, stopped Kilkenny getting a goal. I think Anthony Nash had made 2 brilliant saves in the lead up to it or something like that. And it just gave everyone a huge boost, and I was lucky in the second half. A lot of ball came my way. I don't think I was the spare man, but a lot of ball came my way, and it just, there was a lot of space up the field to hit it up to. I was playing right wing back at the time, and it's like when you're on a rut, you can't get out of it. When things are falling your way, they just seem to come your way, and it was delivering good ball. I was tracking runs, and I'd get the ball ahead of my runner, that kind of thing, and it was just like in the groove, even though I didn't know how I was in the groove. And I remember even thinking at the end of the game, I was absolutely wrecked standing next to Colin Fennelly, and while I should have been jumping around the place, I think the players ourselves as a group didn't really realise until we went back to training that hey, we're after doing something good here and beating Kilkenny, and it gave us huge belief.
Yeah, I'm recalling more and more of your run now. I think Conor O'Sullivan might have been the spare man that day, and in the
semi-final.
Yeah. So jump on to the final then. Now, I was just looking over the team sheets from both finals, and I saw that it reminded me that you were an unused sub the first day. So I kind of tried to think about what would your mindset be coming into those last few minutes. You see Horgan throw the ball over the bar. You're obviously delighted that your team looks like you're about to win an All-Ireland. But the flip side, the equaliser goes over, and maybe part of your head, conflicting emotions, maybe I'll get a chance the second day.
I actually came on, Shane, with about 7 or 8 minutes to go for William Egan.
I must have mixed up the two finals then.
For William Egan, I actually came on for William Egan with about 7 or 8 minutes to go. But truth be told, William was doing fine. But I just have a feeling that the management said we're feeling like, okay, we're nearly in a position to win this. We've Tom Kenny on the bench, who's played for a lot of years. He might bring on a bit of experience. But, when you come on as a defender, you can't really bring experience, because you're dependent on the player you're marking, obviously, so if your man is going to stand out on the sideline, you have a duty to go over and stand next to him, you know what I mean? Whereas if you're coming on as a midfielder or as a forward, then you can influence the game a bit better. So yeah, I remember coming on and I was saying to myself, like, William Egan was actually doing fine and I thought he was playing well, and I came on and I think I got 1 or 2 touches, and when we got the sideline up in the far corner, Stephen Moylan took it, we were a point up. My first reaction, 100% saying, was put the ball dead, put it dead. The time was practically up. I said, if the ball goes dead, he'd blow it on the puck out. And people said it to me after, he should have put it into the corner and you should have fought for down there. And I was saying, look, that was the minute we got a sideline, I was like, put it dead. But I knew then, the minute the puck up was coming, Brian Gavin was running down towards the canal end, that he wasn't going blowing any whistle, like he was letting this play on. And I was marking Fergal Lynch and from Clare, and I was just saying, puck the ball down to me, puck the ball down to me, please puck the ball down to me, because I knew I wouldn't let him catch it. Like I said, by hook or by crook, he's not catching it, and if I have to kick it out over the sideline, I'll kick it out over the sideline then. Whereas the ball went down the other wing, the Cusack stand side, and if you actually look back on it, Stephen Moylan took the sideline, and he was nearly the first player back defending the puck out, even though he's a forward. And we just got into sixes or sevens over. We were so engrossed in getting the ball that we forgot about marking our men. And Donal O'Donovan got the ball and put it over the bar off his left-hand side in the Cusack stand, which I'd say, if he was being honest and tried it again 99 times out of 100, he wouldn't get it. But you know, this, you speak about drawing games and the emotion and that you get from the drawing game, but Clare definitely got the advantage from that drawing game and in getting that equalising score and take it back for 3 weeks later, like, you know. And I suppose we thought we had it won, like, you know. There's a great picture of Dr. Khan on the sideline with his hands up, and the scoreboard has us a point up, and the clock has gone over the 2 minutes injury time. But yeah, definitely, I was wishing the ball down the top of me that time in the Hogan stand.
So did it feel almost like a defeat to you when you drew, whereas for Clare it almost felt like a win?
Yeah, you know yourself, if you come into a dressing room after drawing a game where you were the leading team, it's a very downbeat dressing room, and that's the way it was. And you know, Jimmy said a few words, I said a few words, a few more, just to pick it up, like, you know, and get it going. And but it was a down dressing room until the following Tuesday night, really. Whereas I can imagine Clare with Davy at the time were like going, "We have this, lads. We've dug out a draw. You know, we're going to get this the next day," and they would have been cock a hoop. And I think always in a drawing game, you're better coming from behind, snatching the draw and saying, right, we've more to work on, you know.
There were pulsating games. I mean, so many goals, the Anthony Nash penalties and 21 yard frees. Yeah. Like, I don't know, they really did just capture the imagination. Whatever it was a departure even from the typical Kilkenny games that we'd been looking at for previous years.
It was like an outlier, like, you know, it was these two teams came from nowhere. They were young teams, they had no inhibitions. It was just like, go and play hurling, and whoever has the most score wins the game, as opposed to any style of tactic or form of tactic. Like, obviously both teams would have went out with some pattern of play they wanted to stick to, but it nearly went out the window after 5 minutes, you know. And just the colour, the red and white and the blue and yellows, it reminded me of Cork tip games over the years, where Cork tip games are always stick work games, ball work, and the more skillful team wins at the end of the day. And it was really disappointing for me after, because I knew I was finished up. It was the only time in championship that I lost to Clare, finishing up. So it was a really kind of downer to finish my career on. But I knew it was time to go for myself. Like, these need to go on themselves and kind of fight their own fight, I suppose, you know. And I was probably the last of the group to go. You know, Nogue was gone, John Gardner was gone, Sean O, Curran, Ben, Jory, they were all gone. Fraggy, Tim. So Brian Murphy was the only person that he might have played on, I'd say, in 2014. And I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But, you know, it was a new team, so it was time to move on, like, you know.
Was there a point in that Clare game when you thought this is gone? Because they had jumped a good few points ahead. You made a bit of a comeback, and I suppose it wasn't until Derek Conan's goal right at the very end that it was completely gone. But was that when you kind of felt this is definitely done?
Yeah, when he got the goal, it was definitely done. But up to that point, we were always only 2-3 points behind. But we were always chasing the game, to be fair, in that replay, like, you know, especially in the second half. We were never on top, or we never had control of the situation in terms of going about getting our scores, preventing them getting a score, and chipping away at the lead. Anytime we seemed to get a score two back, they just seemed to come down and get their own score. So we were always going uphill in that replay, to be fair, you know. Whereas the first day, once Patrick Horgan got the point, obviously we were ahead, but I felt in that drawing game that we had the winnings of the game, and we had the wherewithal to fight our way through it and to win. But in the drawing game, Clare had that kind of initiative in the game to win it.
Do you remember the dressing room afterwards?
I don't really. I don't. I suppose in my own mind, I knew I was finishing up, so I was going around kind of saying unlucky to the lads, head up kind of thing. But and again, Jimmy would play an important role there. Like, he'd lay it on the line, and he'd be straight up about it and say, look, look, lads, we lost, and this is why we lost, but we'll move forward, we'll get on with it, and we'll come back next year, and we'll drive on again. And he'd be matter of fact about it, like which I like in a way. And no, I don't really remember. And even the banquet that night was kind of a bit downbeat, but we had a good day on the Monday. To be fair, we had good crack on the Monday, but or the Saturday, actually, the Sunday. Sorry, because the replay was on the Saturday night. I suppose the weird thing about that after was coming out of Croke Park, and it was dark, and it was a dreary kind of night, and it was like the Munster final in 2010 when we came out of Thurles after the replay. It was about 10:30 at night, and it was just like, it didn't feel real, because you always associate playing your finals at the middle of the day and nice weather and that kind of thing. And that was probably a standout kind of vivid memory that I recall from it now.
And I read some quotes from you afterwards, and when you decided to publicly announce retiring. I'm 32 now, and I felt it was time to let other lads come through and have their chance. I'm healthy. It's not because of injury. And I even saw a quote from Dave Matthews, who had been involved in your physical training and your fitness, saying that you were definitely still at the physical level to do it. Did you ever feel like afterwards, maybe I shouldn't have left at this time?
No. Being honestly, no. Dave Matthews came in 2012, and we did a lot of athletic style training in terms of long running, long runs to get our stamina up, which at the time, I suppose a lot of us were kind of wondering, what are we doing? Like, we never do this. It's always short speed work. But to be fair to Dave and to Jimmy, I think they noticed, as I said earlier, that our fitness wasn't where it should have been in 2009, 2010, 2011. We were very good over a short distance, but long distances and ending the games we couldn't see out. So that 2012 season we did a lot of work in terms of long physical running, and it stood to us in 2013 actually. So I actually, even though I was getting long to do it, I enjoyed those tough sessions, and it stood to me later in the year. Then at my club in Grenada, we won junior hurling county, and we won an intermediate football county in 2013. And I remember finishing that year in December, and I actually still felt fresh. I said, yeah, I actually could still play games for the rest of the year if I wanted to, But I knew then that, no, I wanted to move on. I wanted to go back to my club. We're a small club outside between Cork and Mallow, and we were gone up intermediate hurling, and we were gone up a grade in football. And I wanted to be around for those league games and those championship games and be preparing with the team so that we could kind of hold our own at that grade for a good few years, which we still are. We're still intermediate hurling. We've fallen down the order now in football, but I think if I kept going with Cork, I wouldn't have given as much time into the club in terms of maintaining their status intermediate, But no, I've never looked back and wished or said I should have played in 2014 or played on.
In 2019, John Myler brought you in as part of the coaching ticket. Now, this would have been towards the tail end of the Munster Championship and before going through the back door. But you'd obviously been a coach with UCC, and you would have had players like Shane Kingston, Mark Coleman, Dara Fitzgibbon, stuff like this. So how did you end up on the coaching ticket?
Funny enough, I'd be good friends with Fraggy, who was John Myler's, I suppose, on-field deputy, I suppose you could say. He was doing a lot of the coaching for John. He asked me, I'd say in could have been early 2018, when they were starting their season, to come on board. And like that now, at the time, I was still playing with my club. I still had an interest in playing games. With a young family at the time, I suppose we had a young boy, another on the way, and I felt probably it was taking on too much. And again, Fraggy asked me in the winter of 2018-19, and I said, no, look, with a newborn baby then. And so when the Munster Championship finished in 2019, he actually texted me, I'd say, because he felt I'd probably say no. He said, would you come on and give me a hand doing the hurling for the All-Ireland Championships? And at that time I said, you know what, I obviously can't say no again, because, if you keep saying no one will ever ask you again. So, but at the time I felt, yeah, look, actually I'd like to get involved and see could I do something. As you say, I knew a lot of the players from UCC, and help them out. And probably looking back now, I would have got involved. I would have got involved earlier in the season with them when they asked me in 2018 or 2019, because I enjoyed it. I never missed the inter-county game when I finished playing. But when you got back into playing, then going to the qualifier in Westmeath, we played Kilkenny in Dublin, and you just got that buzz kind of back, that feeling of going up to the matches. And it's a totally different perspective. Like the night before, you drive up, you go up in the train or the bus, and you've no butterflies, you've no nervousness as such, because your work is done. You can't do much more apart from last minute advice to the players, and you obviously get engrossed and mixed up in the game and the emotions of it. But I never enjoyed the build up to games. You know what I mean? I always felt sick in my stomach of it. But when you're not playing, you can kind of relax a small bit more, you know. But yeah, that's how I got involved in it. I looking back, as I say, I would have probably should have got involved earlier in the season with them, but maybe down the line.
And like the quality of the players in that Cork panel is like obviously unbelievable talent in the forward line, especially. What's kind of missing, because people talk about, oh, there's a lack of steel, and especially because of the fade out against Kilkenny, that fed into that kind of stereotype.
Yeah, like I don't think it's a lack of steel as such, because the way the modern game is played now, like I think you can get around the fact that you've a lack of hard men or lack of steel by, you know, this short passing game, this really strong athletic type of game that you can think your way through the game, as opposed to 15, 20 years ago, you know, whereas you played a game one way and that's it. I honestly believe it's just that bit of luck. Like in 2018, there were 6 points up against Limerick. Seamus Harnady's goal chance, Limerick came back through the game. And again, you know, we talked about Clare in the All-Ireland final in 2013. Limerick drawing that game, even though it went to extra time straight away, they had the impetus going into extra time as opposed to Cork, you know. Cork were dead on their feet, they were gone at that stage. And just that small bit of luck, Patrick Horgan hit the post. If it went over, they probably would have went on to win the game. But unfortunately, I suppose from a Cork perspective now, their talisman, Patrick Horgan, is a year or two out from probably retiring. So they need someone to come in and fill his boots pretty quickly, you know, in terms of being a leader up there and getting all those big scores, taking that team over the end line. It'd be a shame if he had finished his career without an All-Ireland medal, given that he got so close on a couple of times. But there is fantastic talent on that team. But it's just that bit of luck that they need, that bit of luck and that bit of confidence that luck brings to get you over the line, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Like in 2016, there was all the talk of the 5 younger players who come in and made a big difference. You know, Shane Kingston, Mark Coleman, Luke Meade, Dara Fitzgibbon, Colm Spillane had come back from his cruciate. There's another player off the top of my head that I'm not remembered. But how come it's probably taken another little bit of time for those lads to really kick on from 2017, and it's probably not going to be for another year or two that we really see the true capabilities of these guys. Is it kind of, what's the reason that this Cork team hasn't fully gelled yet, do you reckon?
I suppose in a way it's similar to when back in 2003 when myself, Ronan Curran, Niall McCarthy and Satanta came on the scene, that, you know, we were these newcomers coming into a team, but that was a team of winners in terms of they'd won underage titles, they'd won senior All-Irelands, they knew how to get over the line, and by that very fact that we kind of learned pretty quickly how to get over the line and win the games. Whereas you look at Mark Coleman, Shane Kingston and Dara Fitzgibbon coming in 15, 16 kind of thing, you know, they came into a team that fell short in 2013, fell short in 2014, and probably had this bit of self-doubt in the back of their minds somewhere, and it might have crept into those new players coming in then, you know, that if they were coming into a team of winners and they know how to win, all of a sudden you've Mark Coleman winning Munster Championships and All-Irelands, and I know they won a Munster Championship at 17 and 18, but like if they got over the line in Croke Park that time, I think you might have seen a lot more out of those Cork players in the last couple of years, and in a lot more in terms of just seeing out games as opposed to the performances they bring, because the performances they bring are fantastic. It's just that getting over the line and seeing out the game that know how to just win a match in a tight situation, you know.
Because Conor Lahan, for example, now, I reckon he has as much talent as anyone in the country, and at times we've seen it. Is there something that has to happen for him to really kind of get that consistency that maybe is the only thing lacking?
He's a very competent style player, you know, in that he needs to get the ball at the start and it to go well for him, for the rest of the game to go well. If it doesn't at the start, he can fall off, like, you know, and the game won't go his way. He'd be kind of in and out of it. Things will go wrong and the head will fall down, and more than likely then he'd be taken off, like, you know. So he really needs the game to take off for him from the word go, you know.
Absolutely. And then I suppose the final question, Can you see this Cork team being in the shake-up for an All-Ireland when things eventually do come back? And I mean, even we talked about, we did a show here recently where we were talking about if it came back in the winter, and Michael Verney was saying that he'd put a cross through Cork straight away for the reasons that we talked about, that talk of maybe the lack of steel or what have you. But either way, whether it's summer or winter, do you see Cork being in the shake-up when things return?
I think so, yeah. Obviously, I think summer hurling will probably suit Cork a bit more than winter hurling, and it's going to be a different format. And I think the format might bring the best out of Cork in terms of it's a knockout championship. I'm assuming it's going to be a knockout championship. Over the years, Cork, and even in my own days when we were playing league games, we could go and play a league game and we mightn't be quite at the pitch of the game. We'd know we'd have another game the next day to kind of take us on, whereas if Cork know that it's all or nothing, then I think they might bring a better mentality to the game in terms of seeing it out. Plus, they seem to have a good regard for Kieran, and he seems to bring the best out of them, like Jimmy would have done in the Cork teams over the years. So I definitely wouldn't write him off, but you probably have to look at the reigning champions Tip and Limerick as the go-to team, really.
Tom,
they could draw each other in the first round of the championship, Tip and Limerick in Munster, and there's one of them gone already, so the championship format could sway a lot of people's minds.
Absolutely. Tom, you've been very, very good at your time. Really appreciate it. And no doubt we'll chat again soon.